This is the third and final instalment of my winter landscape photography road trip around the far north of Scotland. In part 1 we saw the landscape transform as rain turned to snow, and I was able to capture this panoramic. Aside from a slight hiccup with the lights, my 4x4 camper van performed flawlessly. In part 2 I woke up to a winter wonderland with almost perfect sub-zero conditions for photography. In this episode I drive south to Torridon and battle with heavy, driving snow. Will these dream conditions leave me frustrated as I struggle to find clean compositions amongst the chaos, or will Scotland deliver once again? Well, good morning everybody, and welcome to a very snowy Scotland. So I arrived quite late last night and there was a few inches of snow on the ground, and I've had a look this morning and it seems to have doubled because it's more or less filled in my tyre tracks. So I've had quite a good dumping of snow overnight, which gets me very excited for the photographic potential, shall we say, of this morning. You know, it's really nice to get some good conditions, because I feel like before this trip I felt like I was stuck in a bit of a rut, so really nice to get out and just indulge in some landscape photography just for a few days in the van. I am remote, very much the middle of nowhere. I'm about 2 miles from my location, so as soon as I finish my coffee I'm gonna defrost the windscreen and drive down to my location. Might only be -1. Oh, but that wind, man. It's a lot colder than that when you factor in the wind chill. So I've come to this beautiful Scottish loch. It's about 45 minutes from the van walking. And there's no one here, I'm the only one here, and it's fantastic. And I've got my first subject, which is this small grouping of birch trees. I was hoping that they would have snow plastered on them, but that's not the case, and I think a lot of that is to do with the wind. Because at the minute I can't shoot it because the wind is coming right at me, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to shoot when you've got wind and snow blowing into the lens. I don't want to dedicate too much time for this. I'll give it 5-10 minutes. If it doesn't change, I'll move down the loch and look towards shooting an image with the snow, or at least with the snow going across. And then on my way back, I can always try again for this composition. So I decided to bail on that composition. I felt like I was just wasting time and I wasn't overly enamoured with it. However, as I mentioned before, on the way back, it's there if things change, but at the minute, it's currently unshootable. So one of the problems I'm having this morning is the actual snowfall, and I don't mean blowing into the lens like before. Well, there's not enough of it, believe it or not. We have had a good dumping for snow. You know, for the UK, this is good going. But it's not enough. It needs to be quadruple this, maybe double that again, because the landscape is the terrain, you know, there's lots of shrubbery and bushes and the snow's sitting on it, but it's not covering it. So what we have is this messy, cluttered chaos everywhere, and it's difficult to isolate subjects and find calm, peace and tranquility, which is what I look for in my own photography and what I'm looking for this morning. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to tackle that. I guess I'll continue searching and looking for the right subject and the right composition. So I briefly mentioned before about how I was struggling with the landscape and I found it very chaotic and messy. So you can imagine my delight as I crested over the hill down the footpath and came across this frozen portion of the loch. Now, if anybody can tell me what's going on here, I would appreciate it massively, but somehow, by some phenomenon, we have these perfect circles and these fantastic patterns on the ice. So the loch's frozen, snow has fallen, and I'm assuming water is seeping out and melting the snow, causing these patterns. This, to me, is exactly what I look for in photography, something unique, something that's fleeting. This won't be here tomorrow or the day after. It'll melt or it'll freeze over and snow over. So you might be interested to know that when I make these videos, quite often I'll make sure that I take a photograph first and then I'll work backwards. So I'll film everything else, so get the shot and then work backwards from there. Unless there's like fleeting epic lights, then it's all hands on deck. But when I can take my time, get the shot first, because that's the most important thing. And what's fascinating, what's really interesting, as mentioned before, that this image was fleeting. Well, there's this incredibly important, perfect circle in the bottom left of my composition. It's now gone. Can you believe it's gone? The water is seeping and moving and these patterns are changing. And now it's gone. The composition, in the 5 to 10 minutes I've been talking to you, has gone. And now the shot's gone. But it's okay, because as mentioned before, when filming these videos, typically I will get the shot first and then work backwards. So I've probably walked about another mile or so, up past beyond the trees that are in the background of that image that I just shot. And I haven't seen anything else to shoot. I think that's the problem when I get an image initially, a first image that I'm really excited about. Like, I'm then kind of reluctant to shoot anything else unless it gets me as excited. But just in case I don't get another image, I just want to remind you that I've got 2 books available. I've got Landscape Photography on Location Volume 1, and shortly, probably in a week or two, Volume 2 will be out on general sale as well. Very proud of both books, and you can help support the channel if you fancy picking up one of those. Much appreciated. And now I'm just making my way down to this loch shore here, the side of the loch, and see if there's another image, because I am just seduced by all of these snow and ice patterns on the loch. It's starting to freeze over now. The wind's dropped, the snow has turned from hail to fluffy snow, so yeah, things are changing. So again, I'm just playing with these patterns on the ice as the loch begins to freeze. This time I've got a 100 to 400 mil, probably at about 135 mil, and it's using these patches of snow on the loch as foreground elements and interest and patterns to lead through the scene to the interest, which is a group of trees on the end of a peninsula. Composition is so important. The trees that in my image appear isolated on this peninsula, but they're not. There are lots of trees just off to the right, so I've just had to position it just so that this big black obvious tree is out of frame. If that was in frame, it would be a huge distraction, and I can't include that because then it's just trees beyond. So just making sure that that is framed out by just a couple of pixels, and then balancing the foreground with that. It's great. This is, you know, I love this type of photography. So this would be my second image, and again, just playing with the shapes in the ice. Yeah, pretty happy with these. I was not expecting to take another image from this location. I was just making my way back to the van, but the snow has stopped, it's ceased, which is nice. And the mountain's 𝘧𝘦, which is this beautiful dramatic mountain, is now visible, and the soft light on it. And I adore this composition. It's so minimalist. It definitely has that kind of Bruce Percy, Michael Kenner feel to it. And those are two of my photographic idols, shall we say. We have flowing water in the foreground, so I've taken a few shots at a kind of faster shutter speed, and then I've got this case 6-stop filter, which really only brings me down to about a second, and it is just softening the water in the foreground a little bit, but not having a great effect. So I'm kind of trying some with and some without, but it's all about the light on the mountain and that minimalist composition. Stay there, birdie. There's a robin landed on my microphone. Couldn't resist the opportunities to grab a quick snap. Alright, so we are back at the van now, and what a morning it's been. In fact, if you haven't been watching my previous videos, what a few days it's been. It's fantastic. But now, unfortunately, I've got to drive home, and I don't want to because this weather is set to continue and potentially get worse with more snowfall over the next couple of days and temperatures continuing to drop. But my life is a constant balancing act of creating YouTube videos and going out in the field and shooting images, but of course I then have to edit those videos. I sell products like books, so I have to go and ship all of those. I've got all my pre-orders to dispatch, which hopefully by the time you're watching this will have gone out. I have a family life, personal stuff, so it's always a juggling act. So as much as I would love to stay and just, you know, give it another few days, yeah, I can't do that, unfortunately. There's always compromises to be made.
I hope you've enjoyed this mini road trip as much as I have, and what it has taught me is that landscape photography is a pastime full of hope and disappointment. Months can be spent waiting in the grey drizzle, wind and the mud, wishing and dreaming of perfect light and optimal conditions. Hitting a dry spell with your photography is common, and it's during these periods that it's easy to give up on landscape photography. But over the years, and as I've learned from this trip, photography conditions ebb and flow, constantly transitioning from dull slop to magical winter wonderlands. And it's important to use those periods in between to get out and practice and not simply give up, because the good conditions are always just around the corner. If you've enjoyed this video and you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe for more content and help grow and support this channel. Thank you.